So let's bring in Howard Kurtz. Howie, this is my question for you. How does he get away with this?
Well, in the first book, he made a lot of sensational charges against Donald Trump that a lot of people wanted to believe were true. Now, in the case of your interview, look, anybody who was watching could see that you pressed Brett Kavanaugh aggressively, repeatedly, on all the sexual harassment allegations that were public at that time. And also, that interview, which was widely praised across the political spectrum, he struggled so much to answer those questions that they completely changed their strategy at the White House, and he was much more aggressive, of course, when he got to the Senate hearings.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what they wanted to do by putting him out there for an interview was to test him, to have him ask the questions about the specific allegations, every single one of them, even the most salacious allegations that were made by Michael Avenatti's client, which, you know, pretty much folded like a cheap tent. So I think that was part of what they wanted to do. It was right before the hearing. I don't know, because, you know, there was no discussion about the nature of our questions when it came to that. You know, but this is there's a larger issue here with regard to the Robert Mueller report that he's also getting a lot of pushback on here, Howie.
Right. The biggest news in the forthcoming Wolff book has already been flatly denied by Bob Mueller's office, that Mueller had drawn up a draft indictment of President Trump, which seems even more ludicrous now that we know from Mueller himself that he thought he had no legal authority to indict a sitting president. Now, you know, the last book, as you said, got raked over the coals. He wrote that he included accounts from sources that were baldly untrue or contradictory, but he published them anyway. And by the way, I don't know what business he thinks he's in. Sometimes I guess he digs up some interesting or salacious things, but when I profiled him nearly 20 years ago, people were complaining then that Michael Wolff had misquoted them.
Well, the New York Times, I mean, I thought they did a good job pressing him on all of this in their interview with him. They said to him, are you a journalist? And he said, yes, you know, of course. I mean, you know, but he willfully says that he doesn't call anybody, he doesn't check out his stuff because, God forbid, somebody push back on it when he already knows what happened, which, you know, we just demonstrated is absolutely not true.
In another interview, he called himself barely a journalist. And, you know, there's a phrase in our business, it's called too good to check. If he had checked with you or with Fox and had been knocked down, then he might not have had to print it. Or he might have had to at least say that you said it was flatly untrue. That's called journalism. It's not a certain type of journalism. It's not institutional journalism. It's just journalism.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's interesting to note the book sold 4 million copies, his first book. I mean, we'll see, and then it was roundly criticized, and we'll see what happens with this one. But there's definitely an appetite out there for sort of a fiction version, in many ways, of something that passes for journalism or for some sort of, you know, in-the-moment history.
Yeah, almost like a docudrama where you don't, all the dialogue isn't accurate and you have scenes. I'm not making that charge here, but that's sort of what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it is interesting. So we'll see where it all goes from here. The publisher, Henry Holt & Company, do they have a fact-checking responsibility, would you say, Howie?
Absolutely, but many publishers don't check books. Wolff has said he had a couple of fact-checkers on this. I guess, you know, this notion that the fact-checkers didn't get around to checking this fact because he thought it would be silly. I just don't understand it. I've taken so many things out of books and news articles over the years because you got to go to the person whose reputation you are potentially smearing and at least give them their say, and then you can make a journalistic judgment, Mark.
Yeah, that would be appropriate. Howie, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.